Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Again, for the second time today, I'm over on the Brutus Monroe blog with a card. So let's go ahead and get started with what we're making today. I have several products from Brutus Monroe, but the one that I want to focus on today are these simple blends. I think these are genius and simple. I mean, obviously it looks like something that anybody could probably make with just a mask or whatnot, but I gotta tell you, I like to consider myself a little bit of a lazy crafter, and these simple blends make it so easy to do any sort of blending, any ink blending or anything like that. And they not only have this square one, but they have many others. And so I will have the link to the page that has all those blends listed down below in the description box. But what I'm doing is I've grabbed some tumbled glass, distress ink, and my mini ink blending tool, and I am starting just on the outside, and I am blending using circular motions just sort of into the center. I don't go all the way in, and I chose distress ink over distress oxide because I plan to do some stamping over the top, and sometimes it doesn't always work to stamp on top of distress oxide inks. So I mean, I don't know what more to say about these simple blends other than that they're fantastic and they're inexpensive. So you get your outside piece and your mask, and they're the size of an A2 card. And I don't know how long Brutus Monroe has had those in the store, but yeah, I definitely want to get my hands on many more because there's a lot in there, lots to choose from. All right, moving on to my stamping, I am just going to take my cardstock, and by the way, this is Bristol smooth cardstock because I knew that would be good for the blending. But I'm putting that inside of my MISTI, and that was sized to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And I'm grabbing the stamp from Feathered Homes. It's the big branch along with the word hello. And I'm inking those up with my Brutus Monroe Raven Detail ink because I plan to just do some marker coloring, and I know that this won't bleed out. And I'm just going to have to ink it up a few times, which is the nice thing about the MISTI, is if you don't get it inked well the first time or stamped well the first time, you can always restamp it. And then I'll pull that out, and I'm going to trim it down because I again started with a 4 1/4 inch by 5 1/2 inch, and so I'm going to cut off about 1/8 of an inch on each side because I want to do I want to have my border or my background paper, my card base, I want that to stick out just a little bit so that there'll be a little bit of a border. And so I trim that down, and then I'm going to move on to using my Arteza Twee markers. I showed these in a video the other day, and while I think these are really great for planning, they can be used for some minimal techniques in stamping and card making as well. These are not alcohol-based markers. These are dye-based, so these are not going to blend like an alcohol-based marker would. You can get very minimal blending with these, but I wanted the bold look of just the markers themselves. I wasn't trying to do a lot of blending, and with the blending that I was going to do, I wanted it to be fairly bold. So like I used that light brown, and then I'm using this dark brown in just certain areas, knowing full well that I'm not going to be able to blend that out. Not fully, not the way you could with alcohol markers. And so I'm just adding just a little bit of shading and shadowing on the underneath of some of those branches. And then I'll sweep over the top a little bit more with the color. And as you can tell, yeah, it's not really going to blend a whole lot, which is fine. It just adds a little more color over the top is all it really does when I put that second layer of the light brown down. And then I'll move on to some greens. Now this is the set of 48, and there is a bigger set. I think it's a set of 100, and I would love to have my hands on the 100 set, but that this set is sufficient. You could get by very easily with this set. It doesn't have a lot of browns in it, which is fine. But I've said this before, I have full set syndrome, so anytime there's a set of anything, I want it all. And then I'll go back over the top with just using some small pouncing motions, using a darker green, just to add some variation to those leaves. I like this stamp because it isn't, I don't know how you put it, like the details are it's a flowy kind of stamp. I don't even know if that's the right words for it, but like the branches aren't all completely closed, and neither are the leaves, and so it gives you a bit of a whimsical feel. I'll move on to using some red on one of the bird houses. And then I'll use just a darker red on some of the darker areas where shading might be. And that's another thing about this stamp that's really cool, is that you can do some of that shadowing or shading very easily because the stamp is a little bit detailed in some of those areas. And so then I'll use a darker blue on that area, and then I end up grabbing a very dark gray to do the tops of the birdhouses. And then that'll actually finish off what I do for the outside of this card. I wanted this to be a fairly simple card. All right, now that all the coloring is done, we're going to move on to the rest of the assembly. I have a piece of cardstock that is measures 4¼ inches by 11 inches, and that is the sidewalk cardstock from Brutus Monroe. And then I am going to score this at 5½ inches to make it a top folding A2 size card. Nothing really new there, and I don't really know why I always choose top folding cards. I just do. Occasionally I'll make side folding, but typically top folding. And to assemble, this is where I wanted to add a little bit of dimension. I end up grabbing the 1/16 inch Brutus Monroe foam tape, and this is fairly new to me. I've only used it I think on one other card, and I gotta be honest, somebody asked, I really like this foam tape. It sticks really well, and the price point, you honestly can't beat the price point. I haven't found any foam tape of this magnitude, this size, for cheaper. And my biggest beef was always having a hard time getting the backing paper off of other brands of foam tape. And this one, it may look like I'm struggling a little bit, but I'm not. All I use is a paper piercer, and I just try to loosen. At first I was just trying to use my fingernails, and you can do that. I have had some luck with that, but yeah, just use my paper piercer, and once I get it started, it's usually an easy go. There's not a lot of struggle with it, whereas I've had some where you're just like, come on already. But this one is really easy release. And it'll give just a slight bit of dimension. And I like that Brutus Monroe has the black and the white, and they have it in the 16th inch and the 8th inch. So then I'll just attach that to my card base, and that will finish off the card. But I do end up stamping on the inside. You don't see that, but I take some Distress Oxide ink in the color Pumice Stone, and I stamp the rest of those bird houses right there on the inside. So if you liked this card, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you'd like to head over to the Brutus Monroe blog, I will have the blog post listed in the description box as well. And as always, guys, thank you so much for stopping by.